right, everyone, welcome back to the show. I got a great interview with Christian Chavis out of San Diego today. And if you want to learn how to rehab properties the right way, this is the interview to listen to. We've gotten a lot of feedback on some of our other rehabbing shows we've done. And Christian has been, he'll tell his background in a minute, but just to give everyone a high level overview, they do a lot of rehabs in probably one of the most crazy markets, if not the craziest market in America, San Diego. So they are buying properties in bulk. They have a construction company. They're vertically integrated, and Christian's been in the business for a very long time. So I'm looking forward to chopping it up. So Christian, before we get into the nuts and bolts, can you just give everyone a little bit about your background, how you got into all this, and what you guys are doing today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was a landscape contractor for 20 years, had a custom design. I was doing big homes in Newport Coast, felt that I was pigeonholed, couldn't get out of that, that business. And I reached the top. And so talked to someone and they were doing really well 5 years ago, flipping homes. So I'm like, all right, I want to flip houses. What do I need to do? So I got my real estate license and got my GC license all within the same year, and started managing a $50 million fund out of Newport Beach. And so we were flipping houses in OC and LA and San Diego too. So I was running crazy, and eventually went out on my own, and then now partners with Brian Daly, JC Mejia, and Alchemy Renovations, and we're the sister company to the San Diego Home Buyer. That's
That's it. So you had a landscaping contract business. So that in that, like I said, I don't know much about that business, but I can imagine that the job cost in Southern California with the clientele you were dealing with, this is like high end, landscaping jobs, like retaining.
Yeah, they're $500,000 contract.
It's insane, man. It just shows
amount of money that people were spending on just plant material was out of control. It's like, they'd spend $100,000 easy on just plants for these estates. And then I bought a nursery, and so I started, growing the plants that I was selling and designing. So I was like, oh, okay. It's like a candy store a little bit.
Yeah, right. You control everything. That's awesome, man. So you got a lot of experience, running your own show and doing that. So before, the interest rate hike a couple months ago made the real estate market a little strange. You guys are still one of the biggest home buyers in San Diego. So, just give everyone a little bit of background, like how many houses you guys are renovating at a time, because you guys are huge. You guys are buying, in the most expensive market, or one of the most expensive markets, and doing this rehabbing at a high scale. And that's why it's going to be great to chop it up and really teach the people listening, like how to do it the right way and do it in a systemized manner.
Well, and it's hard to do. It's super hard to do. So there's a lot of growing pains there. We were doing 40 a month, on average, which is a lot. It's so many homes. It's a lot of homes.
Yeah, that's insane.
The amount of crew, not just staff, but the amount of crew that it takes to have that machine running is crazy.
That's insane.
So payroll, every week, you'd come through at $250,000, but it's big numbers. That's a lot of staff to manage it.
Yeah, that's wild. So let's just kind of get into it now. So here's where I see it. So a lot of our listeners on the show, they fix and flip houses. They do wholesale assignments. They do a lot of just off-market marketing. They're doing lead generation. They're doing all the kind of stuff people talk about. But a lot of people get derailed, and I've fell victim of this a few times, and it happens now and then, where I do a rehab in an area I don't know. Like I'm doing this right now in Delaware, but I've found a decent contractor. But they get a rehab under their belt, and they work with a contractor, and they just make all of the mistakes. They make all these mistakes. They have no idea what they're doing. And their decent deal they were going to make 35, 40 grand on turned into either a break even or a $10,000 loss. And they say they have this belief they build in themselves, like, oh, well, rehabbing stinks. I hate it. Every contractor is a pain in the butt, like all these things. And I kind of tell them, like, you're working with the wrong contractor, and a little bit of like, you're kind of setting the wrong expectations, and you're not like keeping it to where like the incentive is kind of like mutually aligned. like they kind of let the contractor get away with too much or whatever. And they build this crappy belief where they can't do rehabs. And rehabbing is a skill. You need to know what you're doing. You need to know how to work with contractors. You got to know what stuff costs. But I feel like on this show, we're going to be able to cover a lot of like pitfalls that happen. So when they go out there and they actually do these jobs, they can have them be successful. And number one, they can also make the relationship with their contractor a long-term relationship that has continuity. And it's not a one-off deal where they do one job, the contractor kind of sucked, and then they got to find another contractor. You want to build long-lasting relationships with a core contracting company so you can actually like build your business the right way. A lot of people run into problems when they find some random guy they don't know with no references who has some random crew with them and they all got out of jail. It's just like, I see these horror stories.
Oh, yeah.
I fell victim of it.
For sure. I see it. I still see it. Friends come to me and say, hey man, the guy took 200 grand of my money. I'm like, how did you let that happen? You know,
I've heard that. I've heard it. I've heard it in San Diego. I heard this happened in San Diego. I've heard a few of my friends have hit pretty hard. So let's get into it. So an investor's out there, they want to hire a contractor, right? So what is the process that you guys, because you guys obviously have your own construction business now, but like if you were to do it without your own construction business, you're going to renovate a house. Obviously the numbers make sense. You have, a scope of work that's pretty, solid. It might be off by a little bit. What questions are you, in the beginning, at least, are you asking the contractors that you're interviewing to kind of see if they're, legit or they might not be, and this might be a ride to hell?
Well, are they licensed?
That's a big deal.
Absolutely. Licensed and insured. You're going to spend more for a licensed and insured contractor.
100%.
But that's how you're not going to get, it's a step to not getting hurt. It's not the only step. It's a step. It's a good start. I know tons of people who still, these are, the same flippers I do out here. And they're they'll make mistakes and just hire that guy without the license, and that's, what are you going to go against? How are you going to collect against someone who doesn't have a license or insurance, right? If something goes wrong. Yeah. I've seen guys step on nails, cut a finger off. Like I've seen it all, like, right. Like,
yeah.
You have to have an insured contractor too.
100%. No, that's a big mistake. And then even with a liability, like if they don't have insurance and someone falls off the roof, God forbid, like, the liability is on the owner. Like it's not, there's no questions asked. Like it's the owner's fault and they're going to be the ones with the consequences.
So that's one step for sure. And then obviously, how many flips have they done? Flipping, as you know, is so different than new construction or just some remodels. You'll get contractors who can build a great custom home or their framer, whatever, but they've never flipped a house, and you have to be out of this house in 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
You know the timeline. If we're not done in 6 to 8 weeks, there's issues. You're running over on your holding costs and everything else. So they need to have a crew that's flipped a house and know that speed.
Yeah. No, that's really good. Especially too, as you say, because that's something I want to kind of drill deep there, because flipping a property and like you said, doing a brand new, like custom built house are two separate animals. So when you're flipping the property now, what kind of because you guys have done hundreds and hundreds of houses in San Diego, which is, like I said, probably the hardest market to do it in. When you go into a deal to flip, what are some things that you can do to increase the appeal of the property, make it safe, but also not go way over budget and start putting money into a property where it's really not going to produce an ROI? Like if you do a kitchen well, you can make if you spend 50 grand on the kitchen, it'll give you another, 80 grand in value. Like, what are some things that you see people, the stupid stuff that they do where they're just kind of throwing money away and they're just spending money that's really going nowhere? Because you could really screw that up too. You can overspend and then you got,
For sure. I think, okay, well, this starts with our acquisition team for us, right?
Yeah.
And our acquisition team has to know what their exit is, right? So and order, and I'm very good at this. Like I can go into a home and if you say, hey, my exit's 700,000, you're getting a basic package. I know what my basic package is. It's quick, right? It's $1.25 laminate, and it's that simple Calcutta white subway tile, right? We're gonna do that. We're gonna paint the interior, exterior, so kitchen, bathrooms. That's done. It just kind of goes up from there. It's like, okay, we need $1 million. Okay, well, do we need to open the kitchen now? Do we need an open floor plan to hit your $1 million exit, or a 1.5? Does the master bathroom need to maybe be cheated out a little bit? Those are all questions that I, as a contractor, want to ask. Let's say you, as the homeowner, what's your vision, or the acquisition? What's your vision? What are you trying to get out of this? Is it a hotel? Because we're going to put 25 grand in. Like we're going to paint and do carpet. That's it.
Yeah.
So there's so many. It really starts with that acquisition one for us.
Yeah.
I pull that information out of our acquisition managers.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's real good, especially too with if you're dealing with something. It's funny you say under 700 grand. People are listening who are in the Midwest are like, dude, that's like the biggest house on the block. Like, what do you mean 700 grand?
I don't think there's houses for 700 grand anymore here. Right?
Yeah, right? Yeah, probably not.
Probably not. Maybe soon, but yeah, that's a nothing for us. That's a basic. That's scary, right? The median home price in San Diego got up to almost $1 million, right?
I couldn't believe it because even 3 years ago, it wasn't like that. I mean, now it got so expensive so fast. I was kind of like, this is going to get weird, because eventually it's going to get to like an unaffordability kind of price where you're like, okay, this is not really getting affordable for people. So number one, know the exit strategy. So basically know what price you're selling at, and that's going to directly correlate what type of work you're going to do. So you don't do a $1 million rehab on a property in Encano that's going to sell for 700 grand, and you're going to basically just eat your profit away by overspending where it doesn't need to be spent.
Yeah. The other thing is I saw a lot of this when I was starting, was they wanted to design everything. Oh, I want to pick the tile. I want to pick the color. Listen, paint it white. Just paint the inside of the house white. Don't get creative and paint one wall seafoam green, or no one cares. The lady who comes in to buy this with her husband is like, I want everything white. Just make it white. You know what I mean? It's simple. That's another thing. They overcomplicate the design.
Totally. And then they make the contractor do more work. It's just adding more work for no reason.
Right. For sure.
It's stupid.
Yeah.
So now now we want to shift now on like the properties in San Diego or anywhere that's expensive in America. When you're dealing with properties that are, let's say, over $1 million, like from the $1 to $2 million exit range, let's say they're in Carmel Valley or somewhere where it's, a little bit more expensive, or even Del Mar, which is like really expensive. But now you're going to have to, let's just say your regular rehab on a house in Encano or City Heights, somewhere that's affordable, is $80,000, right? Or $90,000. And you have the same house, same square foot in Carmel Valley, which people who aren't listening, it's just a more expensive zip code in San Diego. You're going to be selling those, let's say, like in the mid-million, like 1.5, 1.6. Now, that same square footage, let's say in the lower area, it was $80,000. Now, that most likely in Carmel Valley, that's probably going to be about like $120, $130 at least. Or do you think it would be, what kind of happens there? Because that's where a lot of guys get in trouble when they're going into different neighborhoods and they don't have experience with the higher end construction stuff.
Yeah. Let me backtrack for 1 second, because you said something that was very important in the beginning. They might not even, the buyer, right, who wants to flip this house might have done really well in, let's say, Encanto, right?
Yeah.
But has never bought in Bonsall. And let's say Bonsall is notorious for shifting foundations. Maybe he has never seen a shifting foundation, which in San Diego, especially anywhere in California, we usually have foundation issues, right?
Yeah. Especially in like Spring Valley and stuff out there, it gets bad.
Right, for sure. So maybe they bought something with a foundation that they don't even understand the magnitude, and all of a sudden there's a $50,000. That's the biggest killer that I've noticed for inexperienced buyers and flippers is foundations.
Interesting.
So
Now,
go
interesting.
ahead.
Now with the foundation, because that is a real, that especially because there's no basements in California really, so it is all slab foundations. How do you like? Because for example, most of our stuff is in the Northeast, and there's a lot of like foundations aren't as big of a deal because there's basements and stuff. It's just not as common. It still happens. How do you kind of know like if you're walking? Obviously, every property is going to be different, but like, do you get a foundation expert out there to like get a quote or like how? Because that could really sink the ship.
That's me.
You could tell right away.
Oh, that's my job, 100%.
Yeah.
I've walked, Greg, I've walked probably, no exaggeration, 2,000 houses at least.
It's probably more.
I flipped probably close to 1,000. So I know a foundation, but I was taught very early. Stephen Burns, another really good contractor in San Diego. Him and I are, we can handle the most volume of homes. And Stephen's a great guy, and kudos to him. He taught me a lot when I first started coming down to San Diego on foundations. But you're going to do a property walk on the inside of the house. I always do, and I have a very specific way I do it. I walk in the door, I hug the walls, come back out, then I do the outside, right? So you're looking for stem wall cracks and uneven floor, cracks above doorways. So, and then you just understand if it's a slab crack, you're gonna pull the floor, cut it out, stitch it, new concrete. It's not as crazy as people make it out to be. It's all doable. It's once you have a good foundation crew under your belt. There's a couple of foundation people in San Diego that they'll charge 50 grand and for a job that we can do for 8, in-house.
Yeah.
But foundations, foundations will kill you. That's the main thing. I always like to tell new flippers, just watch for foundations. Foundations, plumbing leaks, and roofs.
Yeah,
Those are the 3.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Especially that. I had a house one time where we were in contract. We sent the home inspector there. This was in the East Coast, and the whole foundation was like just bowing, and it almost looked like a clown house. And we were like, we need like a $25,000-$30,000 credit for this. Right. And the seller was like, no way. Cause we got a home inspection, like a legit, we didn't know about it. And then we got the inspection. We're like, this is reality. And they were delusional about it and they killed the deal. But at the end of the day, like you could do the best rehab in the world. And if you do the foundation wrong, if the foundation's not accounted for, the second someone walks in, they're like, okay, we got a major problem here. Something's got to go here, and it's going to be the foundation. And now you got to start the whole thing over again.
A very good friend of mine, she's very big in San Diego real estate. She hired an unlicensed contractor. They had foundations issues. He didn't follow the plan. They went to contract. Home inspector came in, said, your foundation is destroyed. You have to rebuild everything, not the right way to go about that, right? You have to get a structural engineer at that point, right? If you're gonna just get a structural engineer, it's gonna cost you what, $800?
Yeah.
Save you 50 grand.
100%. And you do it the right way. You don't got to worry about it.
Do it the right way. Yeah. Now she's going to try to hire us we have to lift the house, right? And it's going to be a bad one. So.
Goodness, yeah. That will certainly be interesting. That will definitely be interesting. So shifting over the next part, this is where another big mistake people make is when they hire a contractor who doesn't know what they're doing and they do the sequence of rehab incorrectly. Like they do the floors before they do the paint, like stuff where it's like, it just doesn't make sense. Like they put new floors in and now they got to paint and now they got paint on the floors, so they do it all kind of wrong because they hire the wrong person. And then ultimately they have a product that doesn't look good. So when you're renovating a house, whether you're doing it as a contractor or you're doing it as a flipper, which is basically the same thing, what is the sequence that you do when it comes to starting the job and like phase 1 and then phase 2 and then phase 3? So you do the house in a way that logically makes sense. So the investor or yourself doesn't need to restart things because they do things the right way from the get-go.
God, let's follow. Okay. So we have a lot of different foremen, and they all vary a little bit. Some of them we'll come in, obviously, demos first.
Just rip everything out. Just
rip everything out. Demos always first.
Okay.
And then if we're going to get a little granular, so we'll try to not everything's permitted. We don't always pull permits. So we'll stash the trash in the garage or hidden in the backyard. And then, you know what I mean? At one point, someone's coming with a dump truck and pulling that stuff out, right? Or trailer, dump trailer. So demo first, and then we want to, if we have to change any ABS, if we're changing out if we're changing out cast iron and putting in ABS.
Okay.
So we'll do all our saw cuts first, start doing all the plumbing work, pull off any drywall if we're changing walls, start harder backing the bathrooms, laying out the new layout. Then they'll come through and they'll paint everything, spray it with the primer. They're all very teeny bit, like I said. Everyone likes their things. But then obviously once it's painted, let's get the floors in, baseboards, start putting the kitchen cabinets together at that point.
Yeah.
The cabinets, then the tile, it should be already hot mopped before the flooring's going in from the bathrooms. So then just the finish work at the end.
Do the punch list items and you stage it and you're off to the races. You can get in and out of it pretty quick.
Let's say for a 1,500 square foot home, we don't want to be there for more than 6 weeks. But that's a full rehab. I mean, like top to bottom, dude. That's a roof. That's everything. That's new. Amazing. That's new bathrooms, new kitchens, everything. Doors. And we'll blow out the doors. We'll take, instead of just buying a door, we'll just rip out the whole door and then just buy a whole new, case it in.
You make it, the house looks brand new at that point. It looks like that's the thing where I see some of your flips online and I'm like, man, like this thing looked like it was a cat infested disaster. Right. And 6 weeks later, it's the nicest house on the block, especially when you guys do the stuff where you see a lot of this in San Diego, not as much in New York, where there's you do the external renovation too. So you like do what is that? They don't have stucco out here. It's not really in New York. You do the stucco, you have like the wood thing, the door, it's like, it looks completely like you would have never do the turf. It's amazing to see some of these houses, like how quick they can transform and what it really does to these neighborhoods, just in that short time period. So you mentioned the P word. I didn't know if you were going to say it. I'm glad you did say it. The permit. That is, man, have I gotten in trouble doing that before. And I'll tell you too, I don't really do the permit deal. Like, unless it's something major where it's obvious, I normally will store the trash in the garage or the backyard. And we're doing paint kitchens. Like, I don't really think a permit is that necessary, because it's just kind of like, what do you really need it for? But when we're doing stuff that's big, like I've done some big projects in New York where we blew the back of the house off and rebuilt the decks and stuff. That's you're going to get flagged there. So what do you guys do? Would you guys have a process where we're going to pull a permit for this? We're not going to pull a permit for this town, this city? Do you guys have a framework for that? Or do you try to just go no permit and then, beg for forgiveness versus asking for permission?
Well, let's see how to word that. I would rather not do permits at all, of course. The city's backed up. Once you're done at that point, if you're the holding cost is so much more.
It's horrendous.
It's so slow here too. I don't know how it is on the East Coast.
It's the worst. You get backed up for 6 weeks to get even your file pushed to the front of the desk. It's you can't even. It's unmanageable.
Yeah. So if it's a high traffic area, if it's an area that there's sticklers and we know we're in trouble, we just will pull a simple over the counter permit, and at least you can do an over-the-counter for maybe just windows. And at least something now is on file, so when the code enforcer's driving by, he's like, oh, okay. I see some work trucks and, a trash bag out front. What's going on? They got a window permit. Okay, that's kind of the hope.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work by any means. Then if you have people who, your competition or a neighbor who hates you that morning for some reason, and they just call the city and say, hey, they're we saw them at night moving walls around. Then the city's knocking on your door the next day. It's, man,
Yeah.
it's terrible. It's terrible.
Yeah, it's bad.
Now you're in a 6-month battle.
Oh yeah. I got a funny story about that. So I was doing a house and this was in very expensive area in New York. And I didn't do any permits. And the only thing that was a problem was when we got, this doesn't happen in California, which is strange, but in New York, when you buy a property, there's this thing called like a municipal search. So if there's any BS with the property, the town goes into the building department records and they see if there was like a problem with the property. And then if there's nothing, you're good. If there is, you have to fix like the violation. So it's like, it's just different. It's a little bit different. But anyway, long story short, when I bought the property, they never sent anyone out to like inspect it. So they were like, oh, there's no issues with this. So then when I sold it after it was fixed, they changed their process and then they started sending people out. So they sent the building inspector out and then he saw there was a deck there that wasn't on record. And I'm like, dude, it's a deck. Like, and then so what they ended up making me do, the deck was like a foot non-compliant with the setback of the lot. So they literally, I had to hire another contractor to chop, I think it was like it was something so stupid. It was 6 inches off of the deck. And I'm like, you're making me chop this deck off by 6 inches. So that it was the dumbest thing ever. And then they're like, okay, you chop the deck off 6 inches, we'll give you the permit and you could, because I was in contract to sell it and the buyer couldn't close because there was a violation. But like little things like that, it's just when you get the building department involved, it just turns into a nightmare. And then someone's running around and then you got a red tag there. And then it's just, you can't, if you don't get to get a permit, it's way better.
Bro, if you have an inspector, think about this. Think about the nightmare situation. An inspector who's going through a divorce. His wife's leaving him after 15 years. He just hates you. He shows up at your job and he's just like, dude, I'm picking everything apart. You're done. I've seen it, like you said, like, oh, an inch. Yeah, no. Tear it out. Bro, it's an inch. Tear it out.
And they have all the power.
Yeah, you're fucked. You can't do anything. Bro.
You are fucked.
You can't do anything. Doesn't matter. Oh, brutal. Scary. That part's the scariest part of all this business.
It is terrifying, especially when you're right there. I could talk about this forever. I had another one. This was dumb. This was really dumb. We had this house we wholesale. We didn't even freaking rehab it. We just bought it, closed it, and put it back on the market. And my knucklehead friend who's listening, Devin, he's a good buddy of mine, so I can say this. He put in the listing description, brand new roof, unbelievable condition. So in this town, the building department sits on the MLS and they wait for new properties to come out so they can tag you with a violation after the fact. So they saw that it was a brand new roof and then they saw there was no permit for it and we got nailed. And it just like set this whole thing.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was. They
sit there somewhere.
What?
Where was that?
Warwick, New York. Really expensive area. Yeah, they sit there and they're like, oh, I'm like, why? I'm like, how do they know? And he's like, oh, dude, they called me and they saw the listing and I'm like, whatever, we'll just not do it next time. So we learned our lesson. It's really stressful. So my rule, this is my rule, and I'm sure you do this too. If there's going to be a roof job, the only rule with the contractor is you must complete the job on Saturday and Sunday because the building department does not go out on Saturday and Sunday. It's magic. Works every time. Never failed me. Knock on wood.
Right. Roofing starts Friday night at like 4. Right.
4 to 7.
Yeah, it's done Sunday afternoon.
Sunday afternoon, man. That's the way to go. And the dumpster thing. I have a project going on down in Delaware, and I told the guy, I said, listen, whatever you do, just put all the junk in the garage. No one's gonna know about it. Sure as shit, I get a freaking picture sent to me that Monday, and the guy's got a big old dumpster in the driveway. And I'm like, dude, you should just put it in the garage. So he got I'm like, just get the dumpster out of there. It's all filled up. But like, that's the stuff where they see a dumpster and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, what's going on here? Oh no, they're doing work. And then like, you just got to hide the evidence. You got to hide the evidence when it's ready to go. You get it out and you're
We've gotten caught so many times because of dumpsters. And I'll
right?
I'm like, why do we have a dumpster on this effing job? I mean, it's like, it's a dead giveaway. Afternoon? Yeah, it's a dead giveaway. You're fucked. Don't put a dumpster on the job.
The most obvious thing. So I got a question for you guys now about, and then I was a couple other things about the contractor stuff with the payments and how to not get screwed on that end of it. Now, you guys have done hundreds of houses, so I can imagine, especially in some neighborhoods around here locally, you've had your fair share of like tweakers breaking into properties. So like, number one, do you have a story about that? And number two, how do you guys make sure? Because if you have like, 50 houses in inventory that are like, I mean, there's so many opportunities where people can break in. So how has it happened? And like, what do you guys do to like prevent that? Because that could get real stressful, if you have all these houses and you don't know if people are in there and they could take the plumbing out. Like, what do you guys do about that? That's serious.
For sure. It happens a lot. Of course I have stories about that, but I've gone to do an inspection just to go check the property. It's for sale. I want to walk through and make sure we didn't make any mistakes or whatever. And there'll be, a homeless dude, and we had a prostitution house. Basically,
No way.
Turned our house into a house of prostitution. Then the cops. It was during COVID, so I walk up to the house. I look. There's like 5 people in the house. I was by myself. I'm a big dude, but I was still like 5 on 1. I don't know, bro. Like, so I'm like, hey, get out, bounce. You guys got to take off. I went back to my car and said, I'll call the cops and let them come out. 6 hours later, the cops showed up. And I kept calling dispatch. I'm like, are you guys going to send anyone? And they're like, yeah, they're going to come. It's just a non-emergency. I'm like, there's people in the house that we own. Yeah, but are you living in the house? I'm like, no, but now homeless people are living in our house, right? It's furnished. It's on the market. Like, yeah, it doesn't count. It's not an emergency. I was like, oh, by the time the cops got there, they were gone. They just hopped the back fence. And
they were out of there?
Yeah. Needles, all the disgusting things you could think of from a prostitution house. On a house that's on the market, that's, it was probably selling for $980.
What was that? What was that? What, you don't remember the neighborhood? I mean, you got a lot of houses. Do you know what neighborhood that was in?
No.
Yeah, I was gonna say 980. That's a decent, that's a serious, that's a big house to have some idiots living in,
Yeah, well, it happens all the time. So what we do now is, if it's a sketchy area, usually we'll have, during construction, our foreman will have one of their guys sleep in the house at night. So there's always someone there, which is nice. Crew's always there. And then afterwards we'll hire, security if it's they just sit in the driveway. We suck it up and pay that cost.
Yeah. I mean, I get that. Yeah, it's gonna happen. I mean, you go down to some of these neighborhoods, that people are gonna break in. It's just they're gonna break in.
It's unfortunate. The world that we live in now, there's a lot more homeless in San Diego than there surprisingly a lot of people. And the police said, hey man, listen, you've got to get these people out as soon as they get in, because there's sometimes they won't kick them out. They're like, oh no, like no, they'll lie and say that they're renting the place from us. Like, it's under it's for sale. We're not renting this house. Prove it. And they stay there for free. It's scary.
Dude, you want to hear something ridiculous? It's funny you say that. So my friend Michael in Long Island, this has happened to him. He's 7 for 7 on his strategy. So what he has that happens, Long Island is very like San Diego. It's very dense. There's a lot of houses in a very compressed area. So it's built out. He had a squatter one time. Well, this has happened 7 times, but one of the times. So he knows that New York and California are very similar. It's very tenant friendly. So these squatters are smart. They actually make a fake lease up. They break into the house. So he had a property where he was renovating it. He put it on the market. Squatter broke in. The neighbor called him. He gets to the he showed up to the property at 6. So he has a system. At 6 in the morning, he shows up and he rings the doorbell like 17 times. And the sleepy squatter answers the door and he goes, what are you doing in my house? Because what happens and I'll tell you how it ended. If the cops come and they see there's a fake lease, it's a civil matter. You got to go to court and there's nothing you can do about it. So what he'll do, I'm not kidding. I can send you videos after this. You'll go bananas when you see these videos. He goes there with a baseball bat and he goes into the property, kid you not, and he starts breaking the walls. He breaks his lamps and he goes, the next thing I'm breaking is your head. You got to get out now. And he says, these people, they're not the smartest, but they're kind of smart. They make a split-second decision. They realize that them being in the property is not worth it. And they get out voluntarily. Because he said he's had people where, that he knows where if you call the cops and the cops see there's a lease, you're going to be, having to evict them. And if it was during COVID, you're on a moratorium. So those people are living there for free for a while. So he's got this crazy system where he just basically scares these squatters out of there. And he's like a big guy. He's not afraid of much. He's kind of like you. But that's his system and it works for him. But I got to send you these videos after the show. You'll be dying. It's just like, he says the video, like staring in the camera. He's like, gets all crazy. Anyway.
How crazy is it that people can, I won't get
right? Isn't it nuts? They can live in a property for free.
Get the fuck out of here, dude. Like if I tried to do that with my landlord, she'd say, yeah, bounce, get out. You know what I mean?
It's ridiculous, bro. It's just, it's scary. It's some of these other states. I mean, in the South, you can do a foreclosure in 45 days. You can do an eviction in 25 days. They're out. California, forget about it. I mean, to do an eviction, I don't really like buying occupied properties in California. I generally will tell the seller, I'm like, if you can get it vacant, I'll give you more money because I don't want to deal with your tenant after the fact because that's
the new rule for us, by the way.
No tenants.
No.
Must be vacant.
Yeah, we're not buying a property with people in it anymore. No way, dude. It's just California's so liberal. Okay to say it's just so on their right.
It is the most liberal place in America.
Like wow, man, it's terrible. So
it's ridiculous. So the note to listeners: if you're in a state where it's not landlord friendly, don't either buy it at an insane price where you're gonna have to probably account for 6 months of holding it, or just get it vacant. So to wrap the show up, to put a bow on this, now when it comes to paying contractors, what do you advise when it comes to having a payment schedule where it's incentivizing for both people to continue and not, you know what I mean? Because a lot of times someone will front the contractor all the money and then the contractor doesn't have a huge incentive to do the job in a timely manner. And then other times they won't pay the contract until the end. And then it's like, it gets all weird. So what do you advise when you do this and when you work with people? How does that kind of work so everyone's interests are aligned?
So what we do is we ask for 10% upfront.
Okay.
That just helps us start buying the material, right?
Yeah.
And then progress payments.
Yeah.
And so 20%, 20%, 20%, and a final 10. When the job's done, you've walked it, the punch list is great, you're happy, pay us our last 10%. That's your protection. No fronting or anything crazy like that. There's no reason why a contractor needs half the money. He doesn't need half. He needs 10%. 10%. And then unless there's some expensive material that he has to get or something like that, you got to, you don't want him to pay it out of his pocket.
Yeah, 100%.
You just don't want. Yeah. No one wants to be. It's a delicate dance, you don't want to be too far in front, and I don't want to be behind. You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah, man, it's so true. I just hired a guy in Delaware to do a company in Delaware to do the job, and I had to sift through like 3 idiots. And this one guy tells me everything I want to hear. I ask him some basic open-ended questions, and he's like, and I'm like, here's the deal. If you want to potentially get this job, I'm a straight shooter. I hope you're a straight shooter. And if you're not, we'll probably find that out soon. Because people from New York are very direct. And this guy was like a little bit not loosey-goosey. I said, if you send me an email with the scope of work that we just went over on the phone and FaceTime, and I sign off on it, we're good to go. The dude never sends me a scope of work. I follow up with him. No answer. I'm like, all right, he's eliminated. Next guy, same thing. The third guy, I said, here's the deal. You send me the scope of work. We'll review it. We'll make sure we're on the same page. We'll go over the payment schedule. We'll sign it on DocuSign. Everything's in writing, and we'll be off to the races. And he was cool, and he did everything he said he was going to do. And so far, we'll probably be done with that house in about 2 weeks. And it's just, when you do the simple stuff, it's amazing what can happen, right? It's like so many people just can't follow the basics. And it just stresses all these investors out. So just be on the same page with them. Like you said, the 10% is a great thing. And then you do the milestone payments, punch list items, and you're out of there. And you can have that long ongoing relationship like we talked about in the beginning of the show. So Christian, man, I could talk to you for hours, man. I might see, are you going to be at that event on Thursday? You're going to be at in La Jolla? Of course. So I'll see you in a couple days.
It's our company event. Yes.
You never know. People are busy, so.
No. It's part of my job. I have to be there.
Yes. Yeah.
That's going to be a fun one. It's going to be a fun one for sure.
It's going to be good. It's in La Jolla now, which is nice and convenient for you guys. Probably said, Greg lives near here. So we're going to do it exactly where Greg lives. So we'll do it right down the road from his house. So he doesn't have to.
It's in a $15 million home. So it's going to be It's going to be a fun.
Oh, it's in a house. I have the address. I just didn't know. I knew it was in La Jolla. I just didn't know it was in. Oh, it's in a house.
Yeah. Yeah.
Literally a house party.
It's literally a house party this month, so it'll be fun.
I'm excited. I'm counting down T-minus 48 hours or whatever. So if people want to connect with you, man, you got a wealth of knowledge. You know, I know you got a great Instagram. So if people want to learn more about the renovation company, what's the best website for that? And then if they want to reach out to you directly, what's the best way for them to reach out to you? And we'll put this all in the show notes, and I'm sure some people will be reaching out to you.
Okay. Do you want me to tell you what they are right now?
Yeah.
Or do you just want them in the show notes?
No, we'll just say them here, and then we'll capture them after.
All right. So websites, alchemyrenovations.com, and then we have Instagram, alchemy_renovations.
Okay.
And my Instagram, you can always DM me, and I have a phone number that I'll let you put out in the show notes. So it's easy.
What's your phone number?
949-355-4170.
Beautiful.
So send me a text.
Love it.
I always will answer texts. That's my preferred.
I'm the same way. I'm like, just text me. It's way easier.
Totally.
I don't gotta answer the phone in the middle of a podcast. So alchemyrenovations.com. Instagram is alchemy_renovations. And then we got your phone number in there that people can plug into. So listen, man, it's a lot of fun doing this, and I'll see you in a couple days.